Good morning, Bitcoiners. Hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Not me. Even if the clocks are changing, it's okay. It's okay. Not everyone in the world remembers about your stupid American clocks, though, by the way. I had forgotten until this morning. We don't do it down here on the island. And even though I remembered it was it on Friday, of course, it slipped my mind. So I woke up this morning thinking, I have plenty of time. We're doing great. We got up early. Just a second. So, but we don't do it in Argentina either. Nobody does it. So we all forget, we all forget. So we had some delays. We were ready, but we had some delays. Good morning, Vaughn. Here, 6102. Nice to have you around. Good morning indeed, Johnny Midas. Happy New Week, Nolan and crew indeed. Jonatoro, good morning. Lucky, hello gang, good evening. And indeed, Johnny Midas, here we go. And my beloved Bampians over on Rumble. Good morning, gang. Happy Monday and happy 20 millionth BTC mined. 1 million to go. Incredible, isn't it? And we'll be covering that today later. Just a little turn of subject where I have it. It's a pretty good location in today's agenda. Jack2K says, good morning, Nolan and Great Awakening crew. Happy Monday. Here's my latest video. It looks like we're at the most relaxing airport in the world, PSP Palm Springs walkthrough. Wonderful. I've never been to that airport. Sounds lovely. The U.S. smaller airports are actually great. I'm a big fan of Reagan in D.C. LaGuardia is amazing. Everybody tells me the Jackson Hole Airport is real great. So I like the little, and my favorite airport in America is Burlington, Vermont. If you've never been to Burlington, Vermont's airport, you're missing out. No lines. It's like a bus station. the parking lot and everything is just like across the street, and you can't even reserve parking in advance. They don't have such like technical facility. Just drive there. It's like $8 a day or something stupid, maybe 12 now or something. And you just leave your car. And when you get out of your airplane, you actually just walk like 25 feet to pick up your bags, and then you cross the street and you're at your car. It's like no bigger than a bus station. So it's just absolutely perfect. So the little ones are good. The big ones, all terrible, all just the worst. San Francisco, not bad. Bad, still not great. Friends, Chef Zero says, for whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. Mark 8:35. Love it, Chef Zero. Blessing, Bampians, indeed. Bitcoin is a small yet powerful and potent investment in world peace. That's what we're doing. Wow, just a 20 millionth. Outstanding, indeed. Chef Zero, indeed. Fight evil with good. Morning, folks. Morning, Charlosky. Yo, Chatelet, escape the Matrix. MMK007 reminding us here, sun is up in Florida and Bitcoin is running. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Give Nolan a like. We like the likes. We like the likes. Tards soaring to great heights indeed. This is our favorite tardy day. This is when we're most tarded. It's when they change the goddamn clocks. Suntech operational. Suntech check. Suntech check. JJ Fox, although faintly, not much sun up in Illinois, I guess. Although faintly, Bitcoin doesn't care if the clocks change, just keeps running. That's a very good point on this day, Seaberger. I hadn't even crossed that bridge yet. Nolan is still chasing down one of the kites. Stand by. No, we had there's a tiny kite way out there today, but it was a big weekend where I live here. In particular, not just the island, but specifically my neighborhood. We have we got a great horse race track nearby. And they do, races every 2 weeks or whatever. But our big time race was this Saturday. And so it makes me stuck here for the day. I can't drive anywhere because the traffic in and out, everyone's parked everywhere, all over the place. But we go to the horse race anyway. So most of the neighborhood back there was cleaned out. No one had time to fly a kite because everyone was up at the horse race all weekend long. So we are clear skies indeed. We're doing great. We're not Our anger at my arch nemesis, as Jack2K mentions, is not here. So we're okay today. Austin Airport is pretty nice. General aviation is the best. Yeah, Austin is a very nice airport. I always get the whatever that smoked meat you can get at the last minute when they'll give you some brisket or whatever it's called. I go to that every time. I bring the whole bag home every time I'm in Austin. I get in trouble if I don't bring the smoked meat back. Whatever smoked meats there are there. But we do love the Austin airport. Very easy to use and no problem. The Honorable Sonny Bono had me from the start, CB Van says. Mounted a seaborne attack on kites, 2, 3, 5. Frogs hit the shore at 0 to estimated success rate, 99%. CB Van, it's exactly what I need. I'm telling you, when I look at drones and stuff now, all I think of is raining absolute hell down onto the kite army. Head and eyes straight. Fall in those yellow footprints. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Teachers in the room. We love it. Lagatard, hike the like. We love it indeed. Okay, folks, let us acknowledge. Oh, no, I got to keep my comments up. Let us acknowledge indeed that we've got a operational sunrise here, like everyone said in the chat, and Bitcoin indeed running. What are we at? 67,000 US trash tokens. It was up, it was down, it was back up. We're about the same. We're in the sideways gang again, but a lower sideways gang. But that's okay. We'll talk about it today. I think there's big changes coming to the price shortly. But now, let's acknowledge it's all happening. Let's have a coffee and talk about all the stuff that's new. There we go. There we go. Now we're good. Now we are good. Okay, let me get this configured the right way, and then we shall hear what the NPCs heard this weekend. It did not go well for them. They had another terrible weekend. Things in NPC land are just getting worse and worse. Climate crisis, everyone, accelerates as warming rates surge. Experts warn, guys, it's warmer than ever in the world. New analysis reveal warming rates surpass historic projections. The projections, guys, we're back on the projections, raising alarms about future climate impacts. Oh no. If the pace of warming in the last decade continues, it will lead to a long-term overshoot of 1.5 degrees even before 2030. Another expert says there is a fairly broad, though not universal, consensus. Fairly broad. Fairly broad. Give me all your money. It's fairly broad. Consensus in recent years, there has been a noticeable acceleration of warming. I noticed it. It was so hot all winter. It was terrible. However, it remains unclear what the portion of additional warming over the last decade is a result of anthropogenic climate. Oh, so they don't know. Okay. More Zeke. Zeke again. More quotes from Zeke. In any case, this is a significant acceleration of the warming rate. It should raise concerns as the world rapidly approaches 1.5 degree threshold. What do we get from Claudie Boyley? The window of opportunity to limit warning even to 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels significantly narrows. Oh no. Oh no. We get this from Germany. Experts warn Germany's debt could rise without more climate action. Guys, if it gets too hot, we're going to go in more debt. So we have to borrow a bunch of money and build all kinds of windmills. And we need solar power from China. We got to spend money. But if we don't spend the money on that, it's going to get even worse. Experts warning that Germany's debt, everyone, it's going to be too hot. We're going to owe so much more money because of how hot it is. Please, no. I can't handle it. I can't handle it more. I can't. This is a new one, too, from America. The National Academy of Sciences isn't biased. This is from the National Academy of the Sciences. It's not biased. Because I said it. I had to say it. But now I said it. Uh-oh, this is bad news, guys. It's been so cold that cherry blossom peak may push to latest date in years. It's so cold. But I thought it was so hot. What happened? What happened? Weather isn't climate, okay? Oh, here's a new one. Guys, you idiots out there, you stupid bastards, you dumb retards sitting around saying, we have a beef cartel. We need to break up the beef cartel. Don't you know, according to the Washington Post, the dumbest way to lower beef prices is to break up the beef cartel. That's the dumbest way. Give them more of a monopoly. The dumbest way would be to decentralize beef. Of course it would be. We need more of a monopoly. You need more monopolies in beef will mean cheaper prices. The dumbest way, guys, the dumbest way is to get rid of the monopoly and the cartel pricing beef and packaging beef in America. Obviously, you idiots. How stupid can you be? Everyone in this chat, so dumb. Grow up, everyone. Buy your meat from industrial packagers. Support your industrial packagers. Otherwise, the beef is going to get too expensive, okay? God, how many times do I have to tell you, idiots? So obvious. And why are you even bothering with that beef anymore anyway? Look, Beyond Meat drops the meat from its name as it expands to plant-based drinks and snacks. Even they know, ditch the meat, guys. You don't need it. Just drink it. Drink Beyond. Beyond what? Who cares? It's Beyond. It's so Beyond. We need more Beyond. Hey, what are we having for dinner tonight? Oh, we're going to have some Beyond. Hey, can I have a Beyond burger? And the cartels, don't let the cartels tell you what's meat. Listen to Beyond. They know. This is great. Mediate. James Tallarico knew his Colbert interview would never air on TV. Bet on CBS host bashing Trump admin for it. Remember when we used to find out these scams weeks and months later? Now you just got to wait a few days and they brag about it. It's really great. Here's other stuff we learned about Tallarico over the weekend from the Bulwark. Christian nationalism, guys, is not a type of Christianity. It's a parasitic form of nationalism that infects Christianity, eats it from the inside, and creates a zombie nationalism that wears a Christian skin suit. Can James Tallarico force it to expose itself? Very good headline. I got another Tallarico one here. I love the Teller. This is from David French, right? Opinion. James Tallarico is a Christian X-ray. Guys, he's a Christian. You thought you had normal X-rays? No. Christian X-rays. Those are the kind of X-rays you want, right? They're safe. If the primary American divide is between right and left, then Tallarico isn't that interesting. There's a long history of progressive religious activism in the U.S., just as there is a long history of conservative religious activism. Yet, if the primary American divide is between decent and indecent, then the equation changes. Tallarico shines! He's so decent. Guys, the problem in America have just been these indecent bastards, these indecent people. You know, we heard they were deplorables and many other things like that, but they're just indecent. Now that we can see it so clearly, it's just between decency and indecency. Remember how decent Joe Biden was and how everyone loved it? Remember when Tallarico criticized Joe Biden for ignoring and denying his grand paternity because the mother of his grandchild was a whore? Remember that? Yeah, that was so decent of him. Who wants a grandkid whose mother is a whore? Nobody. Get rid of that, Get rid of that. That's the decent thing to do. Get rid of that kid. Beat it, kid. Your mom's a whore. We don't want you around here. That old Hunter Biden shouldn't have been out with that lady anyway. He was all coked up. It's not his fault. Obviously. obviously. And we get this. This is one more eulogy. This comes from The Economist, right? We need to read these beautiful eulogies. Oh, I got more than that after the eulogy. This is just a great eulogy I didn't see the other day, but it's really high quality. This is to that Iranian guy who died. And this is what we know from The Economist. Yet, many of his subjects grew to loathe and rise against him. Their troubles were economic, obviously the result of American sanctions, obviously, though they added those familiar, tiresome Western tropes of freedom, human rights, dress codes for women. Clearly, foreign enemies had fomented this. So he responded by beating, jailing, and shooting, eventually ordering the killing of thousands. An attack by dissident revolutionaries in 1981, which paralyzed his right arm, had taught him never to concede. As he said then, he did not need his arm as long as his tongue and brain worked. He hoped to leave a legacy. This is not necessarily a dynasty, though he had 4 sons, all of them clerics. He was thinking more of a second step of the Islamic Revolution, more pious and more energetic. Evidently, his own time was limited. He would be bundled away for safety if or when Iran's enemies struck. How much more honorable, more deserving of the paradise to come, to drink the pure draught of a martyr's end. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? That fella sounds like a nice guy, that mullah, that ayatollah. What a nice guy. Now, these are really good. This is from the attack, I guess you can say, on protesters outside of Mamdani's so the mayor of New York has his own mansion, right? The Gracie Mansion, I guess it's called. And there was a protest outside of Mamdani's house, official residence. And then a fella came by and created an IED and threw it at the protesters. So these are your headlines for that. Smoking jars of metal and fuses thrown at protests near mayor's house. 6 people were arrested after anti-Islamic protesters led by the right-wing activist Jake Lang had it coming. Jake Lang clashed with counter-protesters near Gracie Mansion. The old had it coming, right? Old had it coming, Jake Lang. So there was a lot of fun stuff about this, indeed. Mamdani said, white supremacists were outside of my house, and thank God the terrorist attack was thwarted. So he got it all confused, not mentioning there were 2 different parties. Cynical Publius says, let me give you the plain facts of what happened in NYC yesterday. A small group of protesters led by Jake Lang held a protest entitled Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City. Stop the New York City public Muslim prayer outside the official residence of New York City Mayor Mamdani. 2 jihadists threw homemade bombs at the protesters, which failed to explode. The NYC police took the jihadists into custody. That's what happened. Don't let anybody lie to you about it. There's some really good headlines. Indeed, it was the white supremacists, luckily, had some intifada guys stop them. Catherine, indeed, Paisner says, this is the intifada that all the college students kept telling us they wanted to globalize, as academics, journalists, and political leaders bent over backwards to whitewash their despicable movement. This is the guy. So that was the, what do they call it in the New York Times again? Smoking jars of metal and fuses. It's just a clock. It was just a clock. What do you mean? I just made a clock. Remember Clock Boy? The dumbest thing about Clock Boy was like, it was an invention day. Imagine you actually came to school saying you invented the clock. That should have been the first sign to get the fuck out of here. The clock was already invented. So there you go. Beyond salvation, indeed. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. 68,000 U.S. trash tokens. Oh, I was low. I was low. Indeed, indeed. So that was the attempted attack yesterday, but it just shows you how messed up the information world is here deep in World War III. Mike Solana says, I actually never suspected terrorist attacks perpetrated by Muslims would eventually themselves be framed as examples of Islamophobia. But that's new on me. Got to simultaneously twist and lower your expectations, Mike. You lack vision. So, indeed, it was the Islamophobia that caused them to throw that bomb at the last minute. So, indeed, as we're in this season of fog of war and wondering all about mixed messaging and what's going on and how to tell what's true and how to decipher what's going on, there's a few keys we can follow, a few insights we can take. Now, first, you're not going to be getting great information, especially with Iran and all of these situations, because we're in the fog of war, right? So everyone's got an opinion. Everyone is out there spinning. Everyone has all these dramatic conclusions, when a lot of it is wait and see, of course. But just go and look and see what a psychological operation is actually going on around us. What kind of a psychological operation is happening around us? It's been going on for years, right? Which is why I've been framing World War III for a long time as both psychological and economic. When you see stories like this New York one, or you look at all, it's the reason why we do fake news every day to start the show, just to underline what kind of a psychological war you find yourself in, what kind of a world of spin and censorship and, just absolute projection you find yourself in. So there are signs, of course, right? There are signs. But here's how much better it's gotten, right? Here's how much better it's gotten. So here's this is where we once were, right? We've got the Biden administration, and remember what her name was, the disinformation board head. So someone had pointed this video out to me today. I'm going to reshare so that I make sure I have the audio here. But I just want to show you what, at least if you want to see how much better the fog of war is getting compared to what we almost lived through. So this is pretty insane, but painful, but important reminder that Biden and Kamala tried to make this lying, insane woman their head of disinformation, aka the Ministry of Truth. Just look at this. Wait till you see this thing. Look at the eyes.
Ferocious, it's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo, and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice, or vote. Oh, information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origin seems slightly less atrocious.
One of the craziest people I've ever seen in my life. And indeed, it just shows you that this information war that we are involved in, this huge psychological war where the battle is actually our minds and the battle is actually our perceptions, how important it is that Bitcoin exists in a P2P environment. Because just as Satoshi warned us about third parties and what security holes they are, and how they can inject all kinds of fraud and misinformation and deception into our bilateral relationships, right, that are both commercial and just intellectual. The same goes for banking that we see in media. And Devin Erickson here has a really good frame, and I think it's important. And it comes, first of all, from this year with a left-wing person, right, starting Sandy Peterson, saying the following: even in shows like The West Wing, when they've had a token good conservative, sorry, not a left-wing person, but I'll just read what they're saying. It drove me crazy because their fake conservative never spoke like actual conservatives. Their arguments weren't the same, nor were their positions. They just spewed watered-down leftist stuff. And here Devin Erickson says the following: Conservatives understand liberals a lot better than liberals understand conservatives. That's because conservatives have most of the guns, trucks, and farms, while liberals have most of the cameras and microphones. So every time a conservative turns on a television, tunes the radio, or watches a film, he's hearing what liberals think from liberals. Where does a liberal go to hear what conservatives think? All the radio, film, and television version of conservatives are straw men written by his fellow liberals. To hear what a conservative thinks from a conservative, he'd have to deliberately go and have a non-shouting conversation with someone who he wouldn't normally talk to. And it's exactly that last point here. What's going on with my voice? 1 second. So the idea here that a liberal can go and have a non-shouting conversation with someone they wouldn't normally talk to, that actually happened a lot in Bitcoin. That's why when I said that Bitcoiners in the 2024 election were going to have an outsized effect, it's because a lot of people were able to come through the Bitcoin meetup culture, the Bitcoin P2P world, and start to see things like don't trust, verify. They were allowed to see and able to see in a non-shouting way all of these memetics, which ended up being the way to interpret what was going on with the psychological war, the way to interpret what happened in 2020, the way to interpret why, for example, Trump is so adamant about the SAVE Act, which we're going to talk about later. So, and this point has always been true that conservatives indeed were able to have a better perspective on what's going on than liberals because they know both sides and are able to compare, whereas liberals can't. I would go one step further and say that Bitcoiners are able to have an even better insight into these things, not because Bitcoiners are smarter, not because of any of these things, but because the Nakamoto consensus and what brings Bitcoiners together allows a multitude of opinions to coexist at once so that all kinds of ideas can actually be worked through and people can have conversations and debates and without yelling. So while this is true about conservatives, it's even more true about Bitcoiners because they're actually able to do this last stage here. The Bitcoin meetup forums are exactly where someone can go to have these conversations. And it might not be deliberately, they can accidentally end up there. But it's what allows us to transcend and traverse all of these moments of fog of war. And the fog of war, even on this app, is bad now. Real PDB, another Bitcoiner. And this is why having these insights from Bitcoiners is so powerful and so important. He says this app, and I assume all of social media, is filled with fake news now due to the Iran war and preceded by the Epstein files. So a lot of psychological operations going on across the spectrum about these things. And you can start to see exactly how some of this stuff is being propagated. Here's Professor Zhang, who I was talking about last week, wondering indeed where he's coming from, his Chinese points of view, and his predictions, for example, about what's going on with the Iran war. I'll play those in a second. But here you see what I think is a bit of projection. He's with Sneeko in an interview. So Sneeko usually comes and hangs out at all the Bitcoin events. I've met him a few times. Interesting fella. But here you see Sneeko speaking with Zhang in an interview. And this is what he says about Nick Fuentes.
I saw you.
Look.
Okay.
Sorry, but Nick Fuentes clearly has a political agenda. The guy's a smart guy, but some of his conclusions are clearly manufactured. He's not working from first principles. He's not working, I think, just. I mean, he's a pretty smart guy, and some
Very
of the things
smart.
he says. Some of the things he says is like, someone's paying you to say that. I don't know, okay, but
Someone's
I'm
paying
saying,
him to say that. He says.
Which
I
there's
think
something going on
more or less the case.
with Nick.
I know him very well as one of my good friends. I've never got that. I've never made that analysis, but again, that's your interpretation. But yeah, overall, there's a bigger fight. If he wants to put America first can't happen without getting the Israel lobby out of this country. So I find like that's a good example of empathy and seeing that there's a combined mission. I saw.
So, first of all, projection, right? You can think of it in terms of psychological projection. Usually, it was a famous Tucker Carlson framework that ended up becoming completely true. Tucker used to say it years ago when he would comment on how Democrats are really just telling on themselves with every accusation of Republicans. And at first you say, nah, but then it starts to become pretty true as you continue to watch it and see it. And I see a lot of projection constantly, right? Projection is often something that happens when people have cognitive dissonance. Projection often happens when people are lying, right? Lying is projection is often a tell of lying. Now, I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know what's going on in Zhang, but he goes on here about first principles. And to go back to what I was saying about Bitcoin and the P2P information model and what PDB was warning about brainwashing and spin and slant all over these platforms, and why Bitcoiners using each other as guides are so important during this fog of war. So I'll tell you an amazing story that happened once, which was a friend of mine. When I ran for office in 2011 in Canada, I ran for member of parliament from my hometown, my home area, the about 100 miles of border of between Vermont and Quebec. It's just a long strip along the border, and that's the county I grew up in. I live, of course, on the Vermont side these days, but back then I was still proud to be from my home area. I'm still proud to be, but it's not quite safe for business for me in Canada. So when I was running, I had all kinds of my home area is quite wealthy. It's kind of like the Hamptons of Montreal. So Montreal is to my home area as New York City is to the Hamptons, and lakes, and it's warm, and farms and mountains and skiing and all the fun stuff you can do. All four seasons are there, and so people love it, and it's a great place to be from. And so I had a lot of wealthy retired people volunteering on my campaign, and one of them had been involved in all kinds of big forestry management in Canada for years. And he was telling me a story once of being with a couple of these helicopters looking at some forest somewhere that they were going to cut. And it was out in British Columbia because they were right in the Rocky Mountains with these helicopters. And they had two helicopters. And what that ended up happening was a huge snowstorm came through, like can't see in front of your face snowstorm. And they're in helicopters, so there's limited gasoline, there's limited everything. And the storm just came right over the mountain and completely overwhelmed them, and they were blind, right? So they're blind in a bunch of mountains, and they're already low. So you can't just fly out because you're going to hit a mountain. So what they ended up doing was an amazing thing. These pilots were, hold on, I'll take this off. An amazing story because these pilots were ex-military helicopter pilots, so they knew what they were doing. And the way they ended up getting out was using each other's lights. They just hovered in front of each other. And what they did was they just flashed each other with lights and slowly went up to get out of the mountains so that they could see each other. They used each other as these lighthouses, so they knew which direction could be safe. If something happened, then it would only happen to one of the helicopters because it was hard to stay steady in the crazy winds and the crazy storm that had just passed through. Yet they couldn't just fly out because they were stuck deep in a valley. And then you can't just wait it out because you don't necessarily know how long it's going to be, and you don't have the gasoline to do that. So they had to get out of there. And that's exactly what they did. They used each other as their lighthouses and were able to coordinate a completely vertical ascent till they were high enough, I guess, and understood where there would be an opening to get out of that storm and out of that area. But they survived, obviously. And I'll never forget that story because I think of that. Hold on, we got a windy day slamming doors there. So when I think of that story, I think of how the Bitcoin P2P information network functions and how Bitcoiners are able to use each other and use our network to both not get overwhelmed by the psychological operations, not get overwhelmed by doomerism, not get overwhelmed by seemingly important war that broke out in the Middle East or any one of these other subjects that can become demoralizing and that can become doom filled. And so And also to wade through all of the incentives and scams that are going on in these psychological operations, like who's paying who, and is Nick Fuentes getting paid, and all these subjects. So again, I always go back to Bitcoin, and when Zhang says first principles, just remember what Nick Fuentes said about Bitcoin. Do you need to know anything else about Nick Fuentes when you hear him talk about Bitcoin? He said it's the same as fiat. That's what he said. So it doesn't matter who's paying him. He's retarded. He doesn't know anything about Bitcoin. You can't actually make predictions and talk about the future if you don't understand Bitcoin. You shouldn't even bother. There's no point. Your opinion is zero. If you don't inject Bitcoin into your predictions and worldview, I don't want to hear about it. And our friend Zhang, of course, right, who has never had an opinion about Bitcoin that's worth a damn. Here he is now predicting what's going to happen with Dubai, right? So here he is. He comes in and he predicts what's going to happen with Dubai. And this is his comment, right? So
These are not real societies. And so it's all been a mirage. So, they spend a lot of money creating this image of themselves as safe and secure places where, you don't pay taxes and you can make a lot of money. So put all your money here. And people were putting their money in Dubai. But guess what? Just one drone, one ballistic missile has destroyed this mirage. And once this mirage is destroyed, it's never coming back. So we can expect billions and billions of dollars to flee the GCC, especially the UAE, over the next few weeks.
And is this
over the next few weeks,
paid marketing campaign? I'm sure you've seen these info. Could we expect that they're trying to do damage control?
Yeah, they are. And honestly, these influencers also have property in Dubai, right?
Yeah.
So it's in their best interest to maintain the image that Dubai is still vibrant. But look, once the mirage is punctured, you can't see it again. Okay, so I mean, it's done. I don't see a future here.
It's done. Dubai's done, he says. I, as a Bitcoiner, completely disagree. I completely disagree. I think what's about to happen in Dubai is it's going to become even more important. It's going to become an even bigger hub. Dubai, when he says there's no culture there, also retarded. It has had a culture of being a money laundering free port in an area filled with merchants and supplies and all kinds of commercial activity for centuries. Dubai was always different than the rest of the area because it always had a cosmopolitan slant to it. Now it's much smaller. They scaled that up, but it was always what you see now, just much, much bigger. And when he says that they're done, well, what are you going on? That a couple bombs fell over a 1 week period and some influencers split home for a few weeks. Is that the problem? Or not even influencers? Who knows? Who knows who ended up going home? Iranians, a lot of them, right? Because of what's going on back home. So who knows exactly who left and why and when they're coming back. But again, to understand and predict the future, like Zhang says, you need first principles. You have to bring it back to Bitcoin. I see a ton of Bitcoiners there. I see a ton of Bitcoin infrastructure there. Until I hear that Binance is leaving, until I hear that some of the big miners that are there are leaving, until I hear any of that, his theory is retarded and stupid. It's never going to happen. So, and I'm glad he said it in a few weeks because I've had enough of hearing about this guy being good at predictions. Again, I'll go back to what I said about Nick Fuentes. If you don't have Bitcoin mixed into your future, you're either stupid, which is fine, but go back to the book I wrote, Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management. There is no opinion. It's just NPCs blurting out nonsense. And if it's not that, then he's clearly being directed by someone else, just as he accused Nick Fuentes of a few minutes ago. So Zhang here, who's predicted that America is going to lose the war in Iran. It's going to lose the war in Iran, right? And is also going, and Dubai is not going to be a financial center anymore. Just look at the power of using Bitcoin first contact and that as your first principle. Just look at what someone's opinion about Bitcoin ends up doing to their ability to predict or their ability to have an accurate worldview right now. And you'll see how Bitcoin can pierce through the psychological manipulation going on. Here's just a terrific example. Terrence Howard. A lot of people like Terrence Howard, right? He was an actor. He has this numeracy system that he's going on about. A lot of people a couple of years ago were all excited about Terrence Howard. But this is what he said about Bitcoin on the PBD podcast.
Bitcoin is going to die. I don't mess with it.
You think Bitcoin's going to die?
Oh,
You touch nothing with crypto.
I don't touch it.
Tell me why you think it's going to.
Well, I just got a call from somebody a couple of days ago and said, "Hey, if you get 25 million, you can make 75,000. I just want to put it inside of an account to do some stuff." And this is a friend of mine, and I was like, "Do you realize that Bitcoin is still based on fiat?
It's based on
It's
fiat.
still and because the dollar is decreasing in its value, because the uncertainty of war around." Nobody wants their money in something that can be wiped out with a push of a button somewhere. I've stayed free and clear of it because it's been dropping a great deal. Bitcoin is going to die. I don't.
So, and Brahm has the best take on it of all. Bitcoin can be wiped out with the press of a button is the modern way of dismissing all other intellectual things you might have said. And that's what it comes down to. With Nick, with Zhang, with Terrence Howard. Can anyone who was once a fan of Terrence Howard and the numeracy thing ever take him seriously after he said that Bitcoin can be shut off with a button? You can hit a button and Bitcoin's gone. Whoops! Oh, I hit the button. I hit the button. Bitcoin is hot out. I didn't know what I was doing. It's hot and now it's gone. The Bitcoin's gone. So this is why it's important. This is why the P2P environment is important. And here's Sightbringer picking up on something that I noticed as well. Remember at the beginning of this, and this is why the Bitcoin thing is so important. From day one, I started showing you this no limit account, right? And every time I showed it to you, it was just what's going on in the war. I treated it as that, right? Here, what's happening. And I used it because I didn't agree with it, because I wanted to challenge my own perception of the war. I wanted someone who was not so optimistic about America's chances with what's going on in Iran, that was just sitting there giving some facts. And I already noticed as I shared No Limit Gains account with you guys a few times that it was not making much sense to me, yet there was still a cadence of who, what, where, when, not so much the why. And so No Limit started getting a lot of traction with these things. I don't think I was the only one. The algorithm was feeding it to me. And I shared it with you every day, each time with a caveat, right? I never, if you go back and listen to previous episodes, I think every time you'll hear me say this No Limit is a okay, decent, fact-based, what's happening when, with a couple of things I personally don't agree with, but I wanted to make sure I'm covering both sides of it. Sightbringer ends up breaking down exactly what's going on in this, and this is fog of war stuff, and I think does a great job. He says, the thread reads like a simple signal amplifier, not a clean intelligence picture. So I was reading it from the start saying, is this a clean intelligence picture? Probably not, but it disagrees slightly with my tone on my take, which is why I want it, because there's a counter signal that I might be missing and that it's important for me to share with you guys. So exactly like we heard from that fellow who's comparing conservatives and liberals, exposing yourself to ideas you don't necessarily agree with and worldviews you don't necessarily agree with, that gives yourself cognitive dissonance, which is an important thing to do. It's important to induce it in yourself when you can, to see how you react. And then you notice the trends and signs of cognitive dissonance, word salad, ad hominem. It's that feeling you get in your belly when you want to like argue with someone or debate. That's the beginning of cognitive dissonance. Doesn't mean you're wrong. It means that what someone's saying disagrees with your worldview, which is an important place to put yourself when you're in this fog of war, because you need to be able to see all sides. Doesn't mean you're going to get the answer through the fog of war, just like those helicopters were never guaranteed to get out of that valley. But the way they communicated, the way they used each other as lighthouses, I think is what's been going on with Bitcoiners for well over 10 years now. It's what I do every day on this show, is try to be a Bitcoin P2P for all of you, a peer, in a bilateral way. I understand there's more of you than of me, but I think with each and every one of the people that watch this show, we have a P2P type of communication that I think is a way to touch base with Bitcoiners about all of these subjects. And I think this is happening across the world. It's not just this space. I think Bitcoiners do it in their daily lives. I think you all do this stuff. And that's one of the reasons why you watch, is because it allows you to do this with the people that are in your life or that you come across. And usually I have a few turns of phrases that people can walk away with and manage the news of the day and the psychological operations constantly. But Sightbringer does a really good job breaking this down. He says several pieces inside it point in the same structural direction, though. When stripped down to the real signals, the picture becomes clearer. First signal here, he says, choosing a new supreme leader during active bombardment shows that the Iranian system is prioritizing continuity of authority above everything else. The Islamic Republic depends on a vertical command structure linking the clerical leadership, the Revolutionary Guard, and the internal security apparatus. A vacuum at the top during a war would risk fragmentation. Installing a successor quickly stabilizes the chain of obedience. Second signal, public rejection of a ceasefire during the moment reinforces the same objective. The regime must project resolve to its own security forces. Internal cohesion is the regime's true defensive shield. Once the Guard believes the leadership might compromise under pressure, loyalty begins to weaken. Third signal, the scale of the air campaign described in the thread suggests a systematic military objective. Strikes on missile production facilities, airfields, radar sites, and fuel depots follow a pattern seen in many modern air campaigns. The purpose is to degrade the opponent's ability to sustain operations. Fourth signal, attacks spreading across Syria, Lebanon, and the Gulf show the conflict operating through networked actors. Iran's regional partners and the militias extend the battlefield far beyond Iran's borders. Those actors create pressure on multiple fronts at once. Fifth signal, evacuations, and energy market messaging reveal another layer. Governments often move civilians out early because regional escalation can disrupt transportation, shipping, insurance, and energy flows even before major physical damage occurs. When all these signals are combined, the deeper structure emerges. This conflict now contains three overlapping arenas: military degradation inside Iran, proxy and counter-proxy warfare across the region, political survival inside the Iranian leadership structure. The military arena can weaken infrastructure and weapons production. The proxy arena spreads instability across neighboring states. The decisive arena sits out inside the ruling elite of Iran. Regimes under external pressure survive or fail based on whether their security apparatus and governing class remain unified. The thread itself also contains a large amount of narrative framing designed to attract attention and followers. Phrases like "bigger than anyone expected" and calls to turn on notifications are typical engagement tactics on social platforms. Those parts are not intelligence. The core signals to watch are simpler. Who controls the Iranian security forces? Whether missile and drone launch capacity declines over time? Whether regional actors join the conflict directly? Whether energy infrastructure in the Gulf becomes a primary target? Those four factors determine whether the situation remains a contained regional conflict or expands into something larger. The underlying truth is that wars often look chaotic in real time because information moves faster than verification. Threads like this mix accurate fragments, speculation, and engagement language into one narrative stream. The real picture becomes visible only after separating those layers. And I think that's what we try to do, and why the P2P information network is so important. And indeed, these are the important factors. Who controls the security forces? We don't know. That's been going on from the beginning. They've lost military control. That's why you can never guarantee, like this was in reference to the Saudis or the Americans warning Americans in Saudi Arabia they should leave because new strikes could come. And that's primarily because there is no more command structure within the Iranian military, that there are rogue elements that even if a ceasefire was negotiated today, there's no way that these rogue elements that have been cut off from their political and military command would be able to follow them, because the chain of command is completely broken. Now, we do know that missile and drone launch are declining rapidly. Regional actors are absolutely turning on Iran faster than ever. And energy infrastructure in the Gulf has also been struck, but there's going to be new action on that shortly. So, about the resources, it's important here. You can see from this thread, the Strait of Hormuz has been closed for 8 days. Everyone thinks this is about oil. This is about what oil becomes. 92% of the world's sulfur comes from refining oil and gas. But he goes on here about how we can't get anything done. But it turns out Canada does have a tremendous amount of sulfur saved up. We've got literal sulfur pyramids in Alberta, and that we could get a lot of this out into the market. So I don't think that is a fatal flaw to the system, although it's going to be stuff that they're going to have some objective they're going to have to solve. Here's something we know as well about Iran's Karg Island. So it turns out that U.S. officials are reportedly discussing a plan to seize this island, the choke point responsible for roughly 90% of Iran's oil exports. If the proposal moves forward, the island would fall under direct U.S. military control in the next phase of the war, and Karg is just the opening move. Once it's secured, the plan shifts to locking down Iran's nuclear facilities and tightening U.S. control over the Strait of Hormuz, the economic jugular of the entire region. It looks like that is what is going to happen. And the friends, the neighbors of Iran, definitely turning on them. Qatar's prime minister, Iran betrayed Gulf Trust with attacks. Qatar was trying to mediate a diplomatic solution to the conflict when Iran attacked them and other Gulf states. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani says it's a huge shakeup for the trust in their relationship with Iran, but they'll keep talking because they're our neighbors. It's a destiny. His message to Iran: stop the attacks right away, instantly. He's kicked out the Hamas folks there. This is what we know. Qatar has informed the U.S. it plans to expel Hamas leaders after the group refused to condemn Iran's attacks on Qatar and other Gulf states. So probably the biggest mistake they made was going after Qatar. Qatar has been one of their only sane friends, and that is a big problem. Now, oil spiked a little bit yesterday. There was a moment when it looked like it was going to run away, but then oil markets opened, and the G7 countries considered a joint release of oil from reserves, potentially as much as 400 million barrels of oil as prices skyrocket. Indeed, the details are the following. The release would be potentially coordinated by the International Energy Agency. 3 G7 countries, including the U.S., have so far expressed support for the idea. U.S. officials believe a joint release in the range of 300 to 400 million barrels is appropriate. So that's about, if it's 13 million barrels a day that come out of the Strait of Hormuz, that's about a month. That's exactly the time frame that Trump gave to get control of the region. So that still holds with the 1 month long of uncertainty. G7 countries currently hold about 1.2 billion barrels. So they've got about 10 weeks, I guess, at that rate. Or no, 10 months at that rate, right? So that's about 10 months of oil in reserves that could theoretically last the Strait of Hormuz being closed. Oil prices are back below $108 US trash tokens a barrel. Here's Spencer Gard with a really good frame. It's really long. I'm not going to read it all. But he's a very smart fella who's a war scholar, understands a lot of what's going on, has a great following for his war scholarship. And here's his analysis. He says 7 days into the U.S.-Israel war, the central question is not simply what has happened on the battlefield, but whether the strategy behind the war is working. In classical strategic terms, war must always be evaluated through the relationship between political objectives and military action. The Prussian military theorist Karl von Clausewitz argued that the political objection determines the military means used to achieve it. The success of a war cannot be measured simply by explosions, missile launches, or headlines. It must be measured by whether the use of force achieves the political objectives of the war, whether through territorial control, destruction of military capability, or compelling the enemy to change its behavior in accordance with those objectives. The first task, therefore, is to identify what those objectives really are. Thus far, the United States has been consistent in publicly stating its goals. President Trump's March 1st statement announcing the start of operations made clear that the war is aimed at ending the Iranian regime's nuclear weapons pursuit, destroying the missile capabilities that Tehran has long used as a shield for that nuclear ambition, and eliminating Iran's ability to threaten global commerce through the Strait of Hormuz. Indeed, not a declared regime change war, and really all about the opening up of the economic capacity and the end of the threats to the region as the principal motivating factor. And here we can see war is the realm of uncertainty, he wrote, noting that 3/4 of the factors on which action is based are wrapped in a fog of greater or lesser uncertainty. Uncertainty is not merely a condition of war, it's also a weapon. By keeping the scope and duration of operations unclear, the United States forces Iran's leaders to consider a wide range of possible escalatory outcomes. Will the campaign last days or weeks? Will ground forces eventually be introduced? Could Kurdish fighters along Iran's western frontier become involved? Could Azeri or Balochi unrest intensify? Might internal dissent inside Iran escalate into a broader uprising? None of these possibilities need to occur in order to create strategic pressure. Their mere plausibility forces Iranian decision makers to confront multiple simultaneous dilemmas. And indeed, here, the Islamic regime in Iran is no longer shaping its war, it's reacting to it. Just as importantly, the United States, our forces and interests are already safer today than they were 7 days ago. The regime's ability to secretly pursue a nuclear weapon, threaten American troops in the region, intimidate neighboring states, and hold global commerce hostage through missile and naval coercion is being steadily degraded. None of this guarantees the final outcome of the war. No one can say with certainty whether the Iranian regime will abandon its pursuit of nuclear weapons, agree to intrusive international inspections, surrender its stockpile of roughly 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, dismantle its expanding ballistic missile program, stop using the Strait of Hormuz as a coercive threat against the global economy, or end its decades-long investment in proxy militias and terrorist organizations. And yes, President Trump's demand for unconditional surrender is consistent with the political objectives stated from the beginning of the war. It does not necessarily mean the surrender of the Iranian state. It means the unconditional end of the behaviors that caused the conflict. The regime must abandon its pursuit of nuclear weapons, dismantle its missile program, end its support for terrorism across the region, and stop threatening the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and global commerce. In strategic terms, it is a demand that Iran accept the political outcome this war was designed to achieve. Indeed, 7 days into the war, the evidence suggests that is exactly what is happening. One example is the Iranian president publicly apologizing for attacks on neighboring countries, an early signal that the regime may already be recalculating its behavior, though such statements must ultimately be judged by actions rather than words. Indeed, a final caution is necessary. In the information age, analysis is everywhere, but not all analysis is equal. Just as the reader should examine the biography of an author before purchasing a serious book, it is wise to examine the background of anyone claiming expertise on this war. Review their professional and academic history, examine their previous commentary on military operations, look at their social media posts and past analysis, and look at their opinion on Bitcoin. It's the most important thing you can do. If someone has a long record of purely political commentary, whether anti-Trump, anti-American, anti-Israel, or driven by ideological positions, it becomes difficult for that individual to separate political preference from objective strategic analysis. War depends on clear thinking. The coming days will reveal whether Iran chooses escalation, endurance, or negotiation. For now, the strategic duel continues. And so that's why the P2P information market is so important. And that's why this unconditional surrender as well is important, because it is related primarily not to religious anything. It's really just connected to the Strait of Hormuz and the economic concerns and the economic control and the threat that used to exist about the cutting off of Strait of Hormuz to places like for places like Dubai and Saudi Arabia, and what it could do to the world economy. So indeed, the unconditional surrender that you heard from Trump has nothing to do with what the Bushes did in Iraq, nothing to do with that, nothing to do with removing the Ba'ath Party, nothing to do with cultivating democracy or anything like that. It has to do with the threats that they pose to the international energy systems more than anything, as well as the advantage it gives to insurers like Lloyd's of London in the UK and all of those systems. Because indeed, here you can see from Promethean Action, again, they're discussing the frameworks that they're using to interpret this war. And here's her take, right? What the 1979 oil shock really was and who engineered it, how the same playbook is being run today and why Iran's unconditional surrender is the cure, not the chaos. Is the cure, not the chaos. So here's her comments. No sound again. Come on. Gosh, dang it. Man, I hate when that happens. I just don't understand it. I cannot understand why it doesn't work. It drives me absolutely nuts.
What Iran was becoming and how it defied the globalist plan.
She's talking about early Iran under the Shah leading up to 1979.
By the mid-1970s, the Shah of Iran was using oil wealth to build a modern industrial nation, and he was moving very fast. Over 30 nuclear power plants were under construction or in planning with France and West Germany. So too a massive steel industry. His explicit goal was to make Iran one of the world's top industrial powers, independent, sovereign, no longer dependent on raw material exports. And it wasn't just Iran. France and Germany were laying the groundwork for a new international monetary system that would reform the IMF and finance industrial development across the entire developing world. For British Petroleum and the Anglo-American financial establishment that had controlled Iran's oil since the 1950s, this was an existential threat. The Council on Foreign Relations had already mapped out the future world economy in their Project 1980s project commencing in 1975. They called for a complete halt to exactly this type of industrial development, starting right here in the United States. It became the Carter administration's policies. Just listen to their own words. A degree of controlled disintegration in the world economy is a legitimate objective for the 1980s and may be the most realistic one for a moderate international economic order. Controlled disintegration. That was the policy, and they had the perfect weapon to deliver a major blow. They overthrew the Shah by weaponizing his fatal flaw, the Savak, his brutal secret police, trained by MI6, the CIA, and the Israelis. The Savak made Iran an easy target for a worldwide human rights campaign, and the Muslim Brotherhood, a tool of British intelligence going back to the 1920s, was deployed to run the color revolution that brought the Shah down. When Khomeini took power, he canceled every modernization project, the nuclear plants, the steel mills, all of it, denouncing them as, quote, Western and, quote, anti-Islamic. The resulting oil shock caused by the supply disruptions from Iran and panic chatter in the financial press shattered the economies of France, Germany, and the United States. And it worked exactly as they planned it. The City of London's banks profited from the speculative oil spot market and the control of insurance and settlements on all energy and raw materials throughout the world. The City of London engineered the crisis and they cashed in on it. That is the history they don't teach. It's what we do at Promethean Action every single week. You can get ahead of events by subscribing to our free newsletter. And if you're already subscribed, you might have already thought about the fact that this is the same enemy playbook being run now. It's just a different decade. So now you know what happened in 1979. The question is, why are we talking about it today? Well, it's because the same people, the same institutions, the same imperial establishment that engineered the controlled disintegration of 1979 are running the identical playbook against Donald Trump's economic revolution right now in the United States. Their calculation is straightforward. Iran's counterattacks on Gulf oil infrastructure create a new oil shock. The economic crisis delivers Democratic victories in the midterms. And Trump's economic renaissance, well, it dies in the cradle. When Trump came back into office, he came in with an explicit program: tariffs to rebuild manufacturing, energy dominance to drive down costs, deregulation to unleash industrial investment, and a sovereign wealth fund to finance national development. He revived Hamilton's American system, the very system that the CFR's Project 1980s attacked by name. The parallels to what the Shah was attempting are not coincidental, but there is a very critical difference. Trump's program puts the prosperity and security of the American worker at the absolute center of everything. Not Wall Street, not the globalists, the worker. His national security strategy says it plainly. American policy will be pro-worker, not merely pro-growth, and it will prioritize our own workers here. And Trump is the first president since Roosevelt who is unafraid to exercise the power of our unique American heritage. He knows exactly whose shoulders he's standing on. Here he is, right after the war started, pausing at the statues of Washington, Franklin, and Jefferson he has recently installed outside the White House. While the globalist press screamed about oil shocks and stagflation, the President of the United States was standing with the men who built the most powerful economy in history out of a post-Revolutionary War bankruptcy. That is not a coincidence. Our oil and natural gas supplies are at a peak based on Trump's policies, and we have taken steps to use our own programs to ensure ships going through the Straits of Hormuz, and we've offered naval escorts. There is absolutely no real reason for an oil shock precisely because of Trump's policies. Trump also came in with an explicit security doctrine: and open borders, and the drug trade, exit the permanent wars, and prioritize our own hemisphere. The Middle East was not explicitly a major security target. That's the first time that's been that way in years. But the red lines were clear for the Middle East. Gulf energy must not fall to an outright enemy. The Strait of Hormuz must remain open. The region must not export terror against America, and Israel must remain secure. Iran with a nuclear weapon hits every one of those red lines simultaneously. Not one voice in the anti-war chorus will tell you the regime Trump is destroying was a British intelligence installation. Not one will tell you the 1979 oil shock was deliberate economic warfare. Not one will mention the controlled disintegration of the economy because they were for it then and they are for it now.
And I mean, the proof is absolutely in the pudding. Look at this. This is Daily Mail. Ayatollah Khamenei's son owns a 50 million London pound, whatever trash token that is, luxury apartments overlooking Israel's embassy in London, as experts warn of serious security breach. Hans reminds us the UK government literally seized a soccer club, Chelsea FC, because it happened to be owned by a Russian who, by the way, spent billions of his own money lifting the club from obscurity. Somehow, I doubt they'll show the same energy for assets owned by the mullahs. If that doesn't tell you what's going on, follow the money to find out what's going on. Follow the money to predict. That's why you need to put Bitcoin into these equations. If you're going to predict, if you're really going to understand something, you need to look at incentives. You need to look at money. You need to look at how people are acting, how they're behaving, and the Lloyds of London thing and all of this chaos. What's happening with oil? Again, America's never been higher with production, much higher than Saudi. If you look at Venezuela, if you look at what they can go and take from Canada, if you look at what they've got, not even exploited up in Alaska, if you look at what Russia can bring to the world through India, there's enough oil. We're going to have enough oil. We're not going to run out of oil. We're not, we're not going to have a huge crisis in the amount of oil. Europe might have a little bit of trouble, but they can take their great public transit if they want, right? Here you see, indeed, as Anas Al-Aji says, this is the first time Donald Trump's adult life that he's genuinely unbothered by soaring oil prices. Why? Because disrupting flows to Asian markets is a deliberate part of the strategy, not an accident. The war is not about Iran. And that's why oil prices aren't going to affect Americans. They're going to affect other parts of the world, and it's no one wants it. I think America wants China to get as much cheap oil but at market prices as they can. So really it comes down to the economics, it comes down to the money, it comes down to the vibes, it comes down to all of this, and it comes down to the unconditional surrender, and that we haven't even spoken this way in generations. Cynical Publius says the last time America fought a war with the goal of unconditional surrender of an objectively evil enemy was 1945. Ever since, and when I say evil enemy, it's not even the mullahs I'm worried about here. I still think we should black bag Keir Starmer and the British. I still think the king should be paraded in front of his people for the crimes he's committed against his people. I think we should end the American Revolutionary War. We never ended it. We got to go end it. And when you put it into that context about the objectively evil enemy, imagine they're using the leverage over the Strait of Hormuz to upset the entire global economy. Trump has already managed to take control of all of the different straits and choke points in Panama and Gibraltar and Suez and all the rest of them, Malacca, Singapore, everything. And so this is the last one. And so having this means that the war should be over once it's secured. And I don't mean just the war in Iran. I mean the World War III that we're in, because it is a psychological and economic war. Without that leverage, without the economic concerns, you can really start to see the new world. And that's why unconditional surrender on the economic points, not on regime change, not on Islam, not on Muslim, nothing like that. The unconditional surrender here, just as we heard through the military historian, the objectives are end their threat over the Hormuz, end their threat and their integration and their capacity to stop the global economy. Indeed, ever since we have never, not once, not even in the Gulf War I, fought a war with the goal of achieving total victory until Trump and Iran. America used to understand that if you're going to fight, you fight to win. But think about the year 1945. That means that the only living Americans with a recollection of fighting to win are close to 100 years old. Victory is not understood by most Americans. Couple that with our risk-averse, feminized, coddled contemporary society, and it's easy to understand why soft men like this abhor victory over objective evil and the costs associated with it, and would rather tear down their own country and undermine the men and women fighting in this country. Indeed, here, James Fishback says, how exactly is this America? First, does this make America great again? And this is the fire over Tehran that was, I guess, raining oil because it was so bad. And that did look apocalyptic. It did not look good at all. But indeed here, as Infantry Dort says, you're watching men from our generations, the ones who bled under cowardly rules, finally unleashing the kind of justice we were once denied. Their memories aren't haunted by the bodies they dropped. They're haunted by the ones they weren't allowed to, and the brothers and sisters we lost as a result. So this is a different fight altogether for these reasons. And again, having this unconditional surrender, having men be able to wage war, having American men be able to wage war. Remember, Americans are good at this, really good at this, much better than Iranians and all these people, right? This has been something that America is good at. It's part of the American lifestyle. I mean, I think the future of America is not as the world's policeman, but as Palmer Luckey said, as the world's gun store. And no amount of bleeding hearts are going to change that. The Second Amendment gives America a unique capacity in global markets to supply arms and other such to everyone. And it's just part of the behavior, or it's just part of what the American system is. The American system, it definitely rewards people for building, for doing, for action, for going. Having all of this bureaucracy and all this aristocracy and all of this stuff that we see was un-American in many ways, and having this total unconditional surrender objective really does speak to the American system. It really does speak to us being on the precipice of finally realizing the full continuation and the full capacity of the American Revolution, which was to go and do and build, not philosophize, not blab, not pontificate, not virtue signal. None of these things were the original system. It was go, get land, build stuff. And whoever builds gets. Whoever builds, and if it's good, you get what you earned from building, and you're able to reap what you sow. It's part of the American fabric. It's part of American identity. Americans are hardwired that way. And that hardwiring, I think, this story here that came out over the weekend, this bug, right? The first multi-behavior brain upload. So apparently they reconstructed a bug in a game, and they gave him his brain, and he created the fruit fly in a game, and he did what fruit flies do. Scientists just copied a fruit fly's biological brain and trapped it inside a computer. Not an AI model trained to act like a fly, a total digital copy of a fly. This is some sick sci-fi stuff. So not AI, right? They scanned and copied the brain neuron by neuron, synapse by synapse, from electron microscopy data. Then they dropped the brain into a simulated body in a video game-like environment. The fly walked, it groomed, it fed. Nobody taught it anything. The behavior was already in the wiring. The entire premise of modern AI is that intelligence is something you can train in a system. This is proof it's something you can transfer out of one. Wild times. This has me more bullish on artificial intelligence than large language models ever did. Because I've said for a long time, I knew I was not one of those people who got too caught up in nature over nurture. I was a big nature guy from day one. And I remember, my wife and I used to have this debate. She was a big nurture person before we had kids. Now she would never think that way ever again, of course. Because you see when your kid comes, a lot of pre-loaded software instantly. Like there's things, ways they smile, ways they laugh, all that kind of stuff. Some wind going on and a kite. Those preloaded software that came in our kids, you can still see signs of it today. The way they laugh, mischievousness, their sense of humor, that's all still what we first perceived when they were born. And you can really see these kids as they come out. Children are like that. And you can see the hardwiring. Here's just a great hardwiring case that's similar to this fly one that we saw this weekend, because this was, people talking about it. But here's a sheepdog, right? And this guy's just a little puppy. He's never been outside. And here he is trying to get away, right? This dog's never been out, never herded sheep ever, just a puppy. His master has got him, holding him out, showing them the sheep for the first time in his life. This is the first time this dog has ever seen sheep. And so, indeed, the farmer's about to put the sheep out just to see what happens. And guess what? Look at this. I mean, incredible. Absolutely incredible. First thing the dog has done in its life. So, this is preloaded. I mean, look, you can't put I had a whippet growing up, and I tried to teach my whippet to fetch. It won't ever fetch. It doesn't have the capacity to fetch. It'll go get the thing, but it's not that interested in giving it back to you. So if you threw something, the dog would go get it. But the bringing it back wasn't what got the dog excited. Catching the thing that you threw was what got it excited, because it's a hunting dog that would go and take animals down and in pursuits, right? The greyhounds and the whippets. They didn't go retrieve it. They weren't duck hunting dogs. They were just big game dogs. My little whippet used to be able to take down a deer. It would wait for the days. The game warden brought the dog back to me once and said, we're going to shoot it again if you keeps doing this. But it would be the days where you get a thaw on the snow, and then the snow, then an instant freeze. And what it ends up doing is it creates like a crust above the snow that a dog can run on top of. So a dog isn't heavy enough to sink through that crust. And so they're almost on snowshoes. They can just run right across this crust. Whereas a deer can't do that. The hooves just go right through. So the deer in this environment is very slow and trips. They usually don't want to go around and move much when it's like that because it's painful and slow. They need snowshoes, basically. And they don't have snowshoes. They have the opposite. So my dog would kill deer, like actually take deer down. and show other dogs how to do it. And so, that just born that way, nothing you can do about it. And so this hardwired notion when it comes to security and war is a thing that, this war being conducted on a masculine plane with total unconditional surrender is not something not something we're used to, especially when you see that it's backed up with even more strength. Right, here's Trump with this shield of the Americas. So you got Bukele there, you got Milei, you got everyone who showed up in Florida this week. I don't know everyone who's there. Obviously not Canada. They're not in the shield of the Americas. Too busy being stupid and weak and feminine and all that about war. But you can see here that this strength that's coming to America, this masculine unconditional surrender, and all of these Latin American countries joining the Shield of the Americas and coming together shows that we've got, not just a plan to stop any risks on our continent. The continent is being, like the Dunroe Doctrine, shut down and coordinated for our own security. You can see that it's unleashing even more potential and even more enthusiasm into the American system. And the American system, as I predicted for a long time, is extending out throughout all of the Americans, Latin America in particular. Here's a perfect example. There's the World Cup of Baseball that's about to start, or has started, or is about to start. I don't know what's going on. I don't watch it. But here's the great Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I think from Montreal. I'm not sure if he was born in Montreal, but there he is coming for his press conference yesterday. He plays for the Toronto Blue Jays, representing Dominican Republic. But look at what he's wearing. There he is. Look at that T-shirt. Isn't that beautiful? There's one of the best home run hitters in this tournament wearing a Satoshi Nakamoto T-shirt, just as Latin America is joining with the United States in this whole Shield of the Americas. And just as we're realizing there's an economic war going on, a psychological war, America strengthening, you've got masculine archetypes, really shining through and becoming individuated again. It also happens to be the day where we see our 20 millionth Bitcoin, right? After 17 years, only 1 million Bitcoin remain. B, the reason someone owns their first Bitcoin, help them download Wallet of Satoshi. That comes from Wallet of Satoshi. And here indeed is Joe Carlaseri saying, downright bizarre to me that folks think Warsh's Fed won't be aggressively cutting because oil is higher. Good luck. So think about what this economic war is doing. America is reconsolidating. You've got the biggest baseball star from Latin America wearing a Satoshi Nakamoto T-shirt. You've got obvious cap on Bitcoin and the limit of Bitcoin being celebrated on the very day where it looks like the print is for sure. And I've been telling you for a long time, the print is for sure. There's no way out of the print now. And it gets even better for Bitcoiners because indeed here, every time there's an oil shock, of course, housing goes into recession. So I don't think we're going to have a huge oil shock or anything, but I do see housing continuing to have trouble in this market. And I continue to see Bitcoin shining through. And so when you look at the economic war that we're in, the psychological war that we're in, indeed, you've got Saylor buying $1.2 billion US trash tokens worth of Bitcoin today. This is some big time alpha, big time. This is him putting all of his bets on the table during this week. This is huge amount of signal. And Bram Canstein asks, how long does this continue without any serious person, business, or country joining him? With all of these things in the air, it looks like it is inevitable indeed. Indeed, here, a former World Bank president talking exactly about what's going on in the economy. I'm going to have to redo the audio here. I'm going to close my door as well because this fucking thing is back. A goddamn fucking kite. I can't listen to it anymore. And so you've got the Federal Reserve going under the control of Warsh. You've got the oil and the housing, and a big reason to print to get out of this in order to push forward. And then you get this note from former World Bank president.
Causes the government to think that it's better off than it is, and so that encouraged the government to be short when rates were zero. So why did the government, borrow so much in T-bills? Well, because the Fed was buying the bonds, and it made it look like yields were going to stay low for remember the low for long phrase. So we've got these multiple problems that are going on, and it endangers the dollar. So that's the basic case.
Instead of the Fed having such large balances, wouldn't the private sector be starting businesses and risking capital and bringing returns and adding to growth? Wouldn't all that money be better if it wasn't with the Fed?
That's right, and we're depending on private equity. So as the banks get squeezed out, because they're lending so much to the Fed, it's literally a floating rate loan from banks to the Federal Reserve so it can buy government bonds. So if that were freed up, that would allow the banks to at least consider a small business loan and inventory loan, the kinds of things that help the economy grow. And this is on a global basis. It's not just the Fed. It's all the major central banks doing the same thing, meaning taking money from the economy in order to buy government bonds. We need to be clear on that. I heard the previous segment, they talk about money printing. There isn't any money printing on it. It's just money borrowing, and they pay top dollar for it. The Fed pays 5.4 to banks and 5.3 to money market funds. So to the
So that's what you've got. You've got this huge storm of change economically coming, and you've got this vibes war, right? Where you've got all these people that are pessimistic and worried about things and worried about the future, and then you've got this new system just presenting itself, and those folks using each other to get through this difficult time. And you can see now even Jack Dorsey, right, embracing bimetallism, which is the system that is going to replace the previous system. Jack Dorsey just admitted Block is reluctantly supporting stablecoins after years of insisting Bitcoin should be the internet's native money. And indeed, you've got this, I think, big change that is coming with this system now becoming more and more apparent. You've got Fed Governor Michael Barr says stablecoins could be backed by Bitcoin under the recently passed Genius Act, which is exactly what I think is going to happen. You've even got Besant coming in favor of the mixers now. So hopefully we get the Tornado Cash guys completely pardoned. Whatever trouble they have should be coming to an end. And that's why when you add all this up, when you add up all these economic conditions, we're going to know very soon if we're in the golden age or if the sludge people have won. And cynical Publius says, by the time of the midterms, one of two things will have transpired. We are engaged in another useless, endless war in Iran. True, there's still a possibility that'll go that way. Or two, Iran will be governed by a non-terror sponsoring government. We will have stopped funding Hamas and Hezbollah. As a result, the Palestinians will be forced to make peace with Israel. And as a further result, with the Palestinian conflict in the past, the GCC states will have the political space to become full regional partners with Israel. And we will have finally achieved peace in the Middle East. Remember what the Zhang guy said? Dubai is finished? Nope, I don't think so. But I might be wrong. And if I am, I will freely admit as such. The question is, however, what will happen if I'm right? Will the Democrats, the Libertarians, the Groypers, the social media grifters, the other assorted anti-Semites, the Panicans, and the Doomsters admit their error? I doubt it. They will act like nothing happened and just move on to their next coordinated TDS propaganda campaign. I hope they prove me wrong and admit their failures, but it won't matter because all of these sludge people will align with power. And by aligning with power, you just have to change the world. And Trump indeed is going to do that. And that's why his midterm plan is both financial, with the 21 million hard cap of Bitcoin, with the new financial system, with being able to print money, with being able to do all of these things in order to use the 21 million memetics of Bitcoin, the hard cap, to fight against the soft money, and combine that with the other Bitcoin memetic that he is now intent on spreading. Just like I said at the beginning of today's episode, one of the important things we achieved in the Bitcoin P2P world was having conversations about don't trust, verify, particularly around election integrity. I didn't need to know any proof about 2020 to know that it was stolen. I just needed to know you couldn't audit the election, which I knew beforehand, and I knew during, and I knew after, which meant that it was entirely a political show. And Trump finally getting hard on that today. Elon Musk saying, great. And he actually quotes the great Scott Pressler here. Do you know how one of the ways we got to Trump? It wasn't me, but this is how it started. Before Scott Pressler did anything with the Republican Party, he hadn't had a job yet. It was all just volunteer. But he was the biggest volunteer for get out the vote movements and to fight against the mail-in ballot schemes and vote rigging. And so I reached out to him. I got his phone number, got in touch with him, invited him to Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville. He ended up getting hired by the Republicans when Laura Trump took over the party. But at the time, he was just a volunteer, really. And so I got to hang out with him in Nashville. He was there along with other people. That was my approach, was getting all the people around him. But on the voting question I thought was our way into the Republican Party, because Bitcoiners had this P2P information network and could have these points of view, like I said earlier, that you don't get from liberals because they don't put themselves in positions in general. The liberals who are Bitcoiners do put themselves in those positions and hear other points of view, and were able to come to these conclusions without the political brainwashing overwhelming them. So it was a big change. It was why Bitcoiners were able to bend, unlike any other group, towards Trump and have some consolidation behind it, because it wasn't just the war on crypto, it was this. So Trump here citing Scott Pressler and his great job and hard work, talking about using the filibuster or talking filibuster in order to pass the Save America Act, an 88% issue with all voters. It must be done immediately. It supersedes everything else. So domestically, Trump is saying that it must go to the front of the line, and I, as president, will not sign other bills until this is passed. A not watered down version, go for the gold, must show voter ID and proof of citizenship, no mail-in ballots except for military, illness, disability, travel, no men and women's sports, no transgender mutilation for children. Do not fail. And indeed, it looks like here, James Woods saying, now imagine if the Republicans could stand as one with our great president. The fraudster Democrats would be out of business, but John Thune destroyed any chance of that. It's not over yet. I think he's going to get his way. But just to show you that he has these domestic troubles and why it's this international British thing in the economy abroad, and domestically it's the uniparty. Look what these scumbag Republicans did. Look at how scummy the Republicans really are. They put up a plaque to honor and recognize January 6th. They have the January 6th. They have the 6th. They're sick. In yet another slap in the face to Ashley Babbitt's family, Senate Republicans mounted a plaque honoring her killer and the other Capitol Police in the Capitol. The plague pushes the plague pushes the Democrats' false narratives about the day. House Republicans ought to mount a plaque memorializing Ashley Babbitt's peaceful protest that day. Indeed. And that's why this war is important. That's why the Save America Act is so important. It's going to be in the House today. Here's Chip Roy talking about it. Looks like they're going to try and force the issue there too, and get several versions of it to Trump's desk if possible. And here I will do this and this and this and all these stupid buttons.
Hey everybody, it's Chip Roy from Texas 21, and I'm standing outside the House chamber where next week we are going to move, thanks to the leadership of the Speaker and Leader Scalise, we're going to move H.R. 7296, the Save America Act, legislation that I filed over here in the House and that my friend Mike Lee filed in the Senate. This is common sense legislation. It will require citizenship to register to vote, and it will require voter ID at the polls. This is an issue that polls at something like 80%, regardless of your race, regardless of your background. This is common sense stuff that we think we should move. The SAVE Act, by the way, has passed on a bipartisan basis twice off of the House floor. The problem is Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have been blocking it. So now we're calling on Leader Thune to change this and to force what we call a talking filibuster so that we can force a vote on the Senate floor. We think we can. I'm over in the Capitol Dome room. Across the other side of the dome is the Senate. When we pass this in the House, let's make the Senate do their job and pass the Save America Act.
I think they've passed it before. I don't quite understand how it relates to forcing them into the talking filibuster. But here's the counter to what they're trying to do. Now, tell me if this audio comes through right away, because I don't know.
So you could show up.
But go back to the masculine frame, unconditional surrender. Go back and look at what Trump is doing abroad, and then look at what he's doing at home. It's the same tenacity. It's the same unconditional surrender. So you're going to have to come at this to win this debate with as much intensity as Trump, because Trump is doing the most aggressive thing possible on both files, unconditional surrender and war. And here, I won't do anything else as your president, telling the Senate and Congress, unless you do this for me. And here's the counter. It's Chuck Schumer.
Up at the polling place this November, and they say you're no longer on the rolls. They don't even notify you of it. Millions of people would be purged from the rolls because of this system that Musk and Doge put in.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be notified. You'd show up at the polling place, and they'd say, "Sorry, Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
Sorry, Miss Smith. You're not on the
Not
rolls
American.
anymore."
You're not American.
They don't even notify you.
No.
This is one of the nastiest pieces of legislation that I've ever seen.
So he's
It is
going with
going
the
back
mean.
to the Old South.
The Old South.
Where people were prohibited from voting and spreading it to every corner of America.
Oh.
It is Jim Crow 2.0.
Jim Crow 2.0. So Trump's going with a shield of America, a oil control around the world, a huge money printing, and backed by Bitcoin, and a single demand of domestic politicians. And it is that you're going to pass the SAVE Act. So all aggressive, all maximum aggressive, manly, win a war type mindsets. They're going with it's going to purge people, which is the point. Which is the point. And don't forget, it turns out, we see from here. Indeed. Oh yeah, Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith don't exist, though. Yeah, exactly. That it is popular with everyone, and it's what I've been talking about for a while. And here's a little tidbit I didn't know about. Fun fact, in 1996, Obama won his first elected office, Illinois State Senate, by throwing all his opponents off the ballot. One of his tactics for disqualifying them was to challenge signatures on his opponent's petitions by married women who signed using the wrong name. Happy International Women's Day. You always knew that Obama was this way, scammy. That's exactly what he did. He reported that some of the problems include printing registered voter's name instead of writing. A female voter got married after she registered to vote and signed her maiden name. So that was his trick back then. And all the race baiting is going to fail. They went to Jesse Jackson's funeral this weekend. Big failure. I'll play the audio on this. They all made it political, and so that's not going to work either. The political thing just is not going to work. Crying racism, not going to work. They went to Jesse. He's good friends with Trump, by the way, right? And so this is Jesse Jackson Jr., Jesse Jackson's son, talking about the funeral and the behavior of the Democrat president.
Yesterday, I listened for several hours of 3 United States presidents who do not know Jesse Jackson.
Inspector Reverend Jesse Jackson and the life that he lived to these homegoing services. Come respectful and come to say thank you.
But people noticed, which is why I continue to believe that Trump is going to actually win the black vote this time around. Here's another video. Pissed off Democrats shared, "You damn Democrats effed over Jesse Jackson's funeral and made it about you and tried to insult Trump." Here's what she says.
The Democrats made it about them. I can't believe you all disrespected that damn man's funeral like that. And I'm not going to shut my mouth up any longer because that was so messed up what you all did. The family couldn't even grieve. But they basically told you bastards not to make it political, and you did it anyway. Y'all did not care about the family. Y'all didn't care about Jesse. Y'all didn't care about nothing. Y'all stomped.
These are huge mistakes, huge political mistakes, which is why I think this whole idea of the golden age and people embracing it is going to change election demographics. Trump doing the strongest thing possible on voting, the strongest thing possible on the economy. Both of those actions are going to result, I believe, in the complete and total destruction of the Democrat Party, the complete and total destruction of the City of London globalist parasites, and a complete and total change in the world. World War III, I think, is almost over, which is incredible. What are folks saying in the chat? I got to go quick. I only got 2 more minutes. Spraying chemtrails like crazy today in NorCal. Yeah, it happens a lot. Waiting to hear them speak intelligently about Bitcoin, it says Escape the Matrix. Indeed. Barely says, we've seen quite a few celebs wearing Satoshi gear the last year or so. I think it's more a fashion/brand thing, but a reading could be that they are some stylists and are orange pilling. Yeah. People do think it's a brand, by the way. That was one of the basketball players who said it. But that's okay. It is a brand, so that's fine. It's a free brand that anyone can use. It's an open-sourced brand. Love Jesse Jackson on SNL. Peace and prosperity. President Bukele is attending SHIELD of the World Conference, indeed. There you go. Audio good. Unlimited beauty of the stars. The billions of galaxies are a reflection of the glorious genius of our creator, indeed. That's what's going on there. The ex-algo, says CB Van, is strong right now / not allowing many BTC posts through. I noticed that. Yeah, Vladdy is a Bitcoiner now. Looks like it. Patriots in control. There you go. And when I moved to London years ago, says Noha, I quickly realized that America is not independent. People gave me funny looks when I told them that. Yeah, it's pretty obvious now. Pretty obvious. Your brain is wiped out. What a chump. Dismissed Chang due to 1 Toronto residency, 2 English degree, C CCP stank. Yeah. Chef Zero made some delicious French toast. That's what I made for my kids today. Indeed, with Vermont. No, I made it with Quebec maple syrup because it was delivered to me by my mom. And she didn't get the Vermont stuff. But the Vermont stuff is very similar to the Quebec stuff. All very good. Some people tell me the Maine, a little further north, New Brunswick and Maine is the best. But can't confirm. All right, folks. That brings me to the end of our time today. I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Be good to yourself, gang. Get plenty of Suntech. Indeed. Get the Suntech. Hope you're all doing great. Lucky beyond food so advanced it left actual hunger behind and going straight to trash. Indeed. So, folks, indeed, you're going to see the logo and the thanks for watching screen. And I just want to tell you, thanks for watching. And I shall see you all tomorrow. Peace.